hey, I have an agency and I specialize mostly in like stuntmen and stuff like that. But every now and then these sort of things come through for guys like you. Do you want me to put you on the books? I said, sure. And then Gladiators came back and he got me an audition and, obviously I got the gig, which, sort of really life changing at the time because I was 21 and like, it's funny because it was a short-lived show, but it was such a crazy sort of launching point for me, and I always saw it like that. Right away, I said, "This is gonna be great because I can propel myself from this to get noticed in America." Like I immediately sort of looked at it like that, and what I didn't even really think about until it was actually happening was the fact that like I became a celebrity in England sort of overnight, like literally overnight, because they announced that they were bringing the show back and kept teasing it, the anticipation for it and stuff like that. And the British tabloids are very much, they really cover like what's going on in television and stuff. And people really sort of, it almost became like an event to find out like who are the new gladiators, because the ones from the 90s were so iconic and like such a big part of TV that like, yeah. The build up and the anticipation to like who is the cast going to be this time, like who are they going to be, what are their names going to be, what they're going to look like, all the rest of it. It became like an event. So they did it all. I think it was May the 1st, like it was in 2008, and like we had to go to these shoot locations to sort of to do all our promo pictures and all our like green screen stuff and all this, and in the dead of night, like 3 a.m, so no one would see us, and we were getting like it was super secret about it. And then because literally on one day, like every single news outlet, every magazine, every newspaper, every TV show, every single thing had us all over it, and the ad campaign started because it was run by B Sky B, who's Rupert Murdoch's company. Like they don't mess around.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like I was just thinking about this would be a good opportunity for me to get on TV and make some money, and then hopefully, help my wrestling career. And I,
and then overnight
became a celebrity, and suddenly realized, like, wow, and
no coming back now.
Yeah, I'm saying it because it's true, but I made the biggest impression on that show because I was a wrestler. Like I knew how to talk, like or at least. I mean, I watched some of it back now, and it's like cringy as hell. But
yeah, but you had the idea
time,
back then.
Yeah. Well, I was, and compared to, I was just so different to everyone else. Like as far as I knew that all you had to do was not flub really, and just kind of be outrageous, and British TV would lap it up, and they did. So. As a result of that, I not only got the most screen time on the actual show, but I also did the most media, and so I think it sort of created a very good shop window for Dixie, and TNA, because they were looking very closely at the UK market at that time because they were doing really well over here in England, and. As a result of that, it just was, the timing was good. Like I've heard 2 different versions of how it happened. One is that Kurt Angle swears up and down that he came over to the UK to do some media, turned on his TV in his hotel, and saw me and basically called back and said, "You've got to see this guy. Like we need to find him. Like he's got to be a wrestler."
Okay.
And Dixie's version of it is that. FSM magazine in the UK, like it's like I still write a column for him to this day. They did a big feature on me, because of Gladiators and everything, and obviously they went like, oh, he's a wrestler, and like now he's a celebrity on television. And that was the first ever issue of the magazine that featured a non-WWE guy on the cover, and it was AJ Styles. So. Obviously, Dixie was kind of looking fairly closely at that, and obviously, as a result, like they all kind of came across me. So it was actually through FSM that they got in touch with me, because then, like James, the guy who was running it at the time, called me and said, "Hey, Dixie Carr from TNA was asking for your contact information. Do you mind if I give it to her?" And I was like, "Nope." And
Make the call.
yeah, and honestly, she emailed me and basically said, it was really short. Like, it literally was like, "Hey Nick, like, are you interested in coming to America and, you know, becoming a superstar with TNA wrestling?" Like, or something to that effect. And I just kind of went like, "Yes, I am." And then Terry Taylor took over from there and sort of handled the contracts and all that stuff. And then, yeah.
I mean, when you showed up in TNA, I mean, it was, I think, pound for pound, TNA had probably the best roster of professional wrestling on the planet.
Yeah, at that time, yes.
It wasn't even close. And, I mean, as fans of wrestling, I mean, you can look back from when TNA started from the quote-unquote asylum years until, you know, a couple of years back, and TNA always had such a great roster. You had yourself, the Samoa Joe, of course, the AJ Styles, the Christopher Daniels, and the X Division. And then, I mean, right after you came, there was the Main Event Mafia, and you had Hogan and things like that.
Well, actually, that was before I came, and that was the thing that was that was the thing that really attracted me to it, was because the fact that you had, like, at the time, the roster was a really good balance of, like, it was like Mick Foley was there, Booker T was there, Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash, Sting, Kurt Angle, you know, and then the Dudleys were there, and then there was like Beer Money was super hot act. Everyone knew AJ was the best in the business. Samoa Joe was one of the best in the business, and like, you know, was a very hot sort of free agent, and like, you know, it was and was causing probably more buzz than anyone at that time. And it was like they were all in TNA, and then on top of that, you had all these other talents that were super talented, all the X Division guys, like, you know, and it really was like a who's who, but from, you know, 10 years later, 5 years later, you know, and that was I recognized that right away. Like, I was fortunate because I had because I was a bigger guy in the UK. I had a lot of the time when they would bring over Americans like Gangrel or PCO, he came over, you know, and people like that I would quite often end up wrestling them because they were all so big, you know. And I just remember the first time I got in there with Gangrel, like, he was the first, like, you know, significant sort of star that I had wrestled in a, you know, singles match. And I just remember being like, God, this is so easy. Like, that's how you're supposed to do it, you know. Like, it was such a, you know, and you suddenly realize, like, oh, like, that's what being good is, you know what I mean? And then
right.
when I worked with PCO, it was even better, you know. Like, PCO is, I mean, like, I'm so happy that Carl is like in Ring of Honor now, and I see him all the time, and because you just couldn't find a better human being than him, and he was so gracious to me and to Marty and all the other guys that were there, and would like work with us so much, and it was you know, I benefited from that, so I knew that the only way I was going to get good was to be around people way better than me, because I knew how green I was, you know, and honestly, I hadn't had any opportunities to go to WWE at that time. Like, they did reach out to me in like a year later, like in 2010. But I just thought to myself at the time, because a lot of my mates from, you know, were getting picked up at the same time and all going to FCW in Tampa.
Oh yeah.
And I remember like thinking to myself, I think this is a way better idea. You know, I get to work with Kurt Angle and like Mick Foley and all these guys, and it was kind of like they were sort of just stuck with each other, and I sort of thought, well, I don't know, I didn't think it was better for everyone. I just thought it was better for me, because I just thought, well, I learned through osmosis, and yeah, sure, I would never take that away from my career. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was so valuable.
No, because when you look at that roster, you feel like the guys at the top of the card, like you said, the Scott Steiners, the Booker T's, they'll draw the eyes to the product, and then you have the guys on the middle of the card who are going to benefit from that. So I could absolutely see why, you know, you have the real, like, the workers, and the guys that could put on the great 15, 20, 25-minute matches, but people are still going to tune in for the Hulk Hogan, so you could kind of piggyback off that notoriety. So in a perfect world, it made sense. Why do you think TNA was never able to reach that next level? Was it too much too soon for them? Were they trying to be too much WWE? I mean, from somebody who was there, what was kind of that atmosphere like?
There are way too many answers to that question. There is no one definitive thing. There's no one definitive reason. It's kind of like whenever we go back and drudge up WCW, everyone wants to say, oh, it's because they paid the talent too much money, or oh, it's because like the management was bad, or oh, it's because Hogan, did this and that. It's not. It's always a combination of a whole load of things, and many of which we don't even really know the full truth about. As for TNA, I think they lost their identity. They lost the trust of the audience. That's the simplest way I can say it, is they lost the trust of the audience. And I'm friends with Eric Bischoff today, and we have addressed this with each other. We've addressed it publicly. I think, but like I said, like we didn't get on very well when he came to TNA, because I felt like the way that they came in with the whole tearing up the format and kind of advertising, certain things, and then basically saying like, no, that show would suck. Like, you want to see this instead. I always felt that was just kind of a very bad way to start, because I said, you're kind of insulting the audience. Like, the audience have been watching and following this. That's the reason you're here, because we've built a big enough audience, and now you're telling them that what they've been watching, they're stupid for watching it. And it's kind of like, people don't like to be told they're stupid.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. And, Eric and I, like I said, we're cool now. Like, we actually, I spoke to him a little while back for a long time. He's a great guy. And I respect a lot of things he's done. But for me, I always felt like that was the sort of the beginning of a period of, they set the wheels in motion for the identity crisis that TNA would have after that. Because before that, if you think about it, when you come up from like the Asylum, all the way through the Impact Zone years before we got to the Hogan and Bischoff and that kind of era, there was a very clear branding of it. It was like, cross the line, we're the ones that do like the crazier, sort of faster, a bit more cutting edge sort of wrestling, and we got some wacky storylines. It was, but it was like the 6-sided ring, and like there was quite a few clear on brand sort of messages.
The Ultimate X match, a lot.
Yeah, they had established. I felt they had established themselves as a good alternative. Like, people went, they're kind of somewhere between WCW and ECW. They're sort of this, like, that you kind of feel like you're getting behind the little guy, but at the same time you feel like you're watching like a big time show, and people love being on a wave that's rising. That's one of the reasons why we've been so fortunate with the NWA, because we started from it at such a low point that, people love being on this ride with us, because it's just, we just keep getting better and better and leveling up slowly and doing more, and what I mean? And it's like, people like to feel that they're on the way up with something, not on the way down. And with TNA, it was like, once they started going, okay, we're not going to do this anymore, we're going to do this, and then it's like, we're going to change what day we're on, we're going to do, like, you start kind of giving that vibe off that things aren't going well. And once the audience kind of gets a whiff of like, oh, they're not doing very well, like they're trying to change stuff, like you're exponentially losing the trust of the audience, and then it just becomes a much too heavy scrutiny, like because then everyone starts looking at everything you're doing really, really closely, and then it becomes almost like an unwinnable situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's tough to follow the bouncing ball back then. And I think what some people say, I think it's a different extent, but right now with the WWE, getting a little off topic here, but with the WWE facing the upstart AEW, like